Yeah.
Good morning, Ben. How are you?
Morning, Donald. Yes, I'm good, thanks. Not too bad. Not too bad at all.
Good. Um, may I say a big thank you for agreeing to participate in this project, the Forgotten Generation initiative.
Welcome.
It's so great. And it was just by chance that we met at the university at Chester not so long ago,
Yeah.
and it's so unexpected sometimes when you meet people and, to sort of link into their world.
Mm-hmm.
And for them to be agreeable to come on the journey with us. So I've got a few questions I'm going to ask you, and we'll just go into it and we'll just have a chat. Okay. And we're going to start off with, if you'd like to tell me about your background, place of birth and your parents.
Yeah, sure. And then, first of all, it's a real pleasure to be here, and thanks very much for the opportunity, Donald. It's good to be able to get the word out and to tell my story, I guess. So yes, I was born in Roehampton, London in 1968. One of a pair of twins, and the youngest actually of four brothers. Well, I'm the second youngest because my twin brother is slightly younger than me. So when we were born, my parents split up. Unfortunately, I think there was a disagreement about returning to Ghana, which is what my dad wanted to do. My mum wanted to stay in the UK, so they split up. So my twin brother and I were raised by my mum, as she was effectively a single parent. My elder brothers were back in Ghana with my dad, so he brought them up. Eventually, actually, they both came to the UK as well as teenagers. They eventually, because my dad remarried and had a new family, so he kind of jettisoned, I think, my brothers. So we were born in London, brought up in London. I see myself as a Londoner, really, although I've been up north for so long that I kind of see myself as a bit of a pseudo-northerner these days.
Were your parents both Ghanaian?
Both parents were Ghanaian, yeah. My mum was from Accra, my dad was from Koforidua. But yeah, both Ghanaian. My dad was in the Ghanaian army military. He got to the rank of major, served with the UN. Luckily for him, he had left the army by the time there was a lot of instability in Ghana and military coups and all the rest of it. Because we probably, a lot of army officers got shot, taken to the firing squad.
Really?
But there was a lot of instability in the 80s and 90s in Ghana. A lot of instability. But yeah, so we were brought up in the UK really with a sort of.
That's an interesting point about your father's life, and then the actual rhetoric about what's ensued in Ghana in terms of people being shot and all that sort of thing. How aware are you and your siblings about that sort of life, that sort of world?
Well, I'm aware of it just because I've read the history of it all,
Okay.
And at the time, actually, to be fair, at the time I was also aware. But when I was a little, 7 and 8 year old, I was aware that there were military coups taking place in Ghana. And by this time, my dad was working as a civil servant, actually, so he was kind of all right, So I was aware of it sort of secondhand, quite loosely. I wasn't really one for quizzing my mum specifically about it, and actually, to be honest, Donald, my mum was not around for very much of my childhood. In truth, she spent a lot of my childhood in prison. In various prisons. When I was from the ages of 3 to this is another big part basically from 3 to 6, and then from 11 till I was in my early 20s. She was in prison, in one prison and another. She was in prison. She was in prison. She was a prisoner. Yeah, she was involved with a cocaine smuggling ring. I mean, it sounds fantastical, doesn't it? It's like something you'd put in a novel. But she was involved with a cocaine smuggling ring. You know, this was how she accrued a certain level of wealth to herself, shall we say. But she kept getting caught and she kept getting packed off to prison. So really, you know, when we were very young, we remember being fostered. We weren't sure why. It was only later on that we realized why that was. And that was 3 to 6. She came back to look after us again, 6 to 11, when she managed to get us into independent school. And then 11, we were kind of halfway through prep school, and she got packed off to prison again. And at this point, she had to tell us what was going on. Now, we didn't know why, but we knew she was being robbed of, you know, she was being deprived of her liberty, shall we say. And we were then taken in by Richmond Social Services in London. They effectively became our guardians, the social services. So we were initially sent to Barnardo's. My twin brother and I were in Barnardo's children's home for a couple of years. And then we were, the social services had us fostered, one foster parent after another, didn't really work out. And then eventually, when we were in our mid-teens, they put an advert in the Guardian newspaper to who would be up for looking after these 2 teenagers who were at public school, very intelligent, blah, 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 all that sort of stuff.
Is that right?
Yeah. They put an advert in the paper, and our now guardians, who live in Oxfordshire and had their own 2 kids, a white family, one of whom was a Texan American, but very progressive, but very liberal. They answered the advert and they came to see us, and we got on very well, and they looked after us really from then onwards.
Question, oh my goodness, question. Wow, that's amazing. Question. Did you actually see the advert in the newspaper?
Yeah, we saw that.
Did you actually keep a cutting of that by any chance?
No, I never kept a cutting of it.
Not a problem. Well, can you imagine it?
Yeah, I think I don't even know whether my mum could, but yeah, we did see it, because we had to, you know, they had showed it to us to say, are you okay with this advert? But they never gave us a copy of it as such. And I can't, you know, we were 15, we didn't get the paper. I should have done really, because,
but you know, you're right. One of those things. But you can imagine the impact of that now, so many years down the road, to see an advert like that. And it's about you. You know, wow. Incredible, so that was mainly you and your
my twin brother. Yeah, me and my twin brother. This was
the other 2 brothers were with your dad in Ghana.
They were with my dad in Ghana. They did come back to the UK around. So Les would have, my elder brother, would have been 15, 16 when they came to the UK. So he basically went to public school in the southwest in Dorset, in Devon, I think. It was in Devon. And then he was just basically, because he was, by the time Mum went back into prison, he was kind of in his late teens. He was just looked after by family, friends, and things like that, you know. Richard was an adult by then, so he was just kind of doing. My eldest brother was doing his own thing, but it was George and I who ended up sort of in the system, as it were, you know, being fostered, being, you know.
And they were fully aware of your existence in the sort of homes and that sort of thing, where they kept it speed. That's where, you know, did you keep in contact while you were going through the home system?
With who? With the brothers?
Yes.
That's a good question, actually, Don. Not a huge amount. I can't say we knew much of what they were doing. That's right. So in fact, I'll tell you what was going on. So Leslie and Richard were basically looked after by our godfather, a guy called Philip Dean. He looked after them in North London. That's what happened there. He was our godfather. He, you know, a friend of the family, and he looked after Leslie and Richard. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, so we saw them periodically, but you know, we were trying to make sense of this environment that was suddenly found us, because you know, obviously we were at a public school, you know, posh public school, and then suddenly we were at a children's home. You know, 1 minute we were with a bunch of very rich kids who, you know, and then the next we were off to holiday at a children's home in Tunbridge Wells.
Wow. So what sort of link did you have with your father? Was there any, or was there some, or there none at all?
No, not really. There was very little communication with him.
And that exists right up to today?
No. So my father died
Oh, sorry to hear that.
So that's okay. That's okay. He died 15 years ago. In 1999 we all went back to Ghana. Mum got us all back there, and that was when I sort of reconnected with Dad, I guess. But there was a big elephant in the room, which is my sexuality, being a gay man. I didn't tell him then, but I did tell him after I got back to the UK. He was very unhappy about it. And
Really?
we became estranged once more. So the sadness, I guess, of it is that we, because he was insistent that I get converted, go to the Jehovah's. I wasn't even a practicing Christian at that point, I have to say. And I was obviously not. I was very unhappy about that. So I said, look, if you can't accept me, then we're not going to talk. And that was that, really. And then he died. He died in whenever it was, 2007, 2008, I think.
So you talk about your father being not acceptance of your sexuality. What about your mother?
So but obviously there was the whole army thing. I was in the army for many years. My mum was in prison, we should remember, for most of my army career.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. For most of my army career. She eventually got out in, I want to say 95, 96, maybe. So the reality of it was that, is that right? I'm just trying to, sometimes the years kind of thing. But yeah, for a large part of my time in the army, my mum was in prison. So it was just not, because she got sent back into prison. That's right, when I was at uni. This is the thing. So the reason I'm getting a bit confused is because she came out when we were about to do our A-levels, which was very disruptive. So we were being looked after by our guardian very well. Then mum came out of prison. So we were 18, trying to study for A-levels and things. She caused a huge amount of disruption to our family sort of thing, insisted on us going to live with her, which we didn't really want to do. We didn't really know our mum, really, you know what I mean? Yes. And the emotional turmoil of all that, frankly, I flunked my A-levels. I didn't fail them, but I was predicted ABB. I ended up with CCD.
Right.
It was just a really difficult time. But then, I then went up to uni. I managed to get into Bristol University on a sort of dispensation. I said, look, we recognise you've done very well up until this point. And there was this situation. So I got into Bristol University to study psychology. And then my mum was then packed off back to prison in my second year of uni, Donald.
Wow. So,
exactly.
I mean, that is so rich, what you're telling me there. I mean, we've gone way ahead of so many. That's brilliant. That's brilliant. It's brilliant. The question I want to ask you now, talk about your twin brother. Are you identical twins, or?
No, we're not identical, but we're pretty close. Yeah, we're very close.
Okay. So you move on from a youngster in the sort of environment that you grew up in, and you went to school. What was that like in school?
I mean, that's a really good question. It was confusing. Is probably the best way I can say. So, and this is one of the things I'm kind of looking into at the moment. I'm looking into issues of identity and psychology and things like that as part of my doctorate in counselling psychology. But there we were struggling, I guess, to make something of ourselves as Black boys in a predominantly white school. I mean, there was quite a few Asian boys actually, but very few Black kids. In fact, when we went to the senior school, which would have had about 700, 800 pupils, there were about 5 of us.
Wow.
So literally you could count on one hand the number of Black kids. Whereas there were quite a few Asian kids, so South and East Asian kids, and a lot of Jewish boys, and but obviously predominantly white. So that was one thing, we're a real sort of rarity here. Not many of us at all. And trying to sort of make sense of that was quite difficult. But whilst also having to sort of kind of keep secret from most of our friends the fact that our mum was in prison. That was the other thing. Well, how come you guys are off to stay with guardians, or why are you going down to Tunbridge Wells? Who lives down there? But it was easier once we were properly adopted by our guardians, because then we just let our guardians, friends of the family. Just mums abroad was basically the thing.
Wow.
It was quite tough, it was quite tough. But the funny thing was, Donald, for me, certainly, I don't think it was quite the same for George, my twin, but school for me was the security. Now, I think this is why I probably angled towards joining the army, right?
Okay, that's another subject we're going to come on to.
Yeah, school for me was the security that just was not evident in my family life. My family life was a very fractured affair, with mum in and out of prison and, brothers here, there and everywhere. Only George really was the only constant, I guess. And school was a constant, it was clear what we were, holidays, rules, it was a security for me. And then the army then took its place, I think.
Before we go into the army then, you've got a twin brother. I mean, how different is it to you in terms of, life structure and, the outlook on life? Because you talk about all of that, and then you talk about going into the military, the army, and all of that. How different is your brother to you?
Yeah, he's very different.
Is it?
Very, very different. No, he's very different. We're literally like chalk and cheese. So he is an artist. He's a documentary filmmaker now. He went to study fine art at university, and then he went to film National Film School after that. He's very much a sort of he's someone who chronicles the Black experience. That's his thing. And actually, funnily enough, our sort of careers have started to kind of come together in some ways, because I'm also now doing that from a sort of psychological research perspective. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
But he's done it from a filmmaking perspective. All of his films are about, whether about Africa or the Congolese diaspora or this and that, or the bike gangs in London. This is what George is all about. And he's won 2 BAFTAs. I mean, he's a very accomplished filmmaker, but very, very different to me. If you big beard, he's an artist. We even when we were at school, we were quite unalike. We had different friends. He was sort of a bit happy-go-lucky, very good sports person. I was more sort of studious, and you know what I mean. But we had this. Obviously, we had this really difficult childhood together. We experienced it together, and even though we had our disagreements, ultimately we had this sort of solidity. Then, unfortunately, when I was in the army, we just became quite distant from each other.
Okay.
I have to say, maybe because I was in the army, but didn't really speak much to each other for some years, really. And then it wasn't until about 99, around that sort of time, we had a big falling out over something. I can't even remember what it was about. And then in the sort of course of trying to work out why we were so furious with each other, so we just recognized that actually we've both been kind of struggling with stuff. The scars of the childhood had affected us both in similar ways, but it had been expressed differently. You know what I mean?
That's a very interesting point, because you mentioned the word scars there. I mean, there's got to be many scars, from all of what you just said. That's absolutely amazing. So why the army, and at what age were you?
So I when I was 13, I remember I was reading some comic or something like that, and I was just thinking, wouldn't it be great if I could be an army officer? But it was like a sort of pie in the sky fantasy for me. And then when I got into the senior school, I started to realize that actually, technically speaking, it was a possibility, right? I was at one of the country's top independent schools, which is a good leg up to joining the military as an officer, full stop, right? And the thing that was kind of giving me pause was, so I'm now talking 15, 16. I was looking into it very seriously. I had a couple of friends. One of my friends' dad had become the secretary of the Royal Regiment of Fusiliers. So he was a full colonel. And so I was looking into it, and I was thinking, well, the only thing that really might stop me is the fact of me being a black guy, right? That was the thing that I was thinking. Is like, I'm not sure I see too many black officers around. You know what I'm saying? You know.
Yeah. So you were very conscious about all of that.
I was very conscious about all of that, very conscious. And then I thought, you know what? As I got older, and I became a person of some substance within the school. So I was school captain, club captain, a house captain. Oh, so I beg your pardon, I was school prefect, club captain, house captain. You know, I was a person of quite a lot of authority. And I just thought, you know what, I'm going to give it a bash. You know, why not? Let's see what's what here.
So you mentioned the Army. Why the Army as opposed to the Royal Air Force or the Navy? Did you give them any consideration, or were you just drawn?
I did. I gave the Navy. I didn't really give the RAF much consideration, I have to say, probably because I thought it might be a bit too technical for me. Wasn't really thinking about the pilot thing. But the Navy, I did give serious consideration to. And then I just thought, oh, you know, do you want to kind of be on a ship and sailing around the thing? The Army is probably the best thing for you. And as I said, I knew people who, you know, so my friend, he was going in, he already had a bursary, you know.
Yes.
You know, I knew people who had already had bursaries for the British Army, and I thought that's probably the way to go. Then that's probably the way to go.
Indeed.
Yeah. So that's the reason for the Army. But I do. It's funny that you should say that, Don, because even up to now, I sometimes think of so. You know, maybe you would have been better off in the Navy.
That's life, though, isn't it? That's life.
Yeah.
The path of life will take us where it needs.
Yeah,
where
it takes us where it takes us. Exactly.
So, at what age then did you join the Army?
So I started all the application stuff at around 17-ish, when I was early 17. You know, I did a familiarization visit to the Royal Regiment of Fusiliers in Cyprus at the time. They were at one of the sovereign base areas. I think it was Akrotiri, which was great. That went well. And then it was basically getting me ready for pre-RCB, which I did, which I passed, but they... So I did pre-RCB just as I was leaving school. Just as I was leaving school, or just actually, I think I did pre-RCB actually when I had just got to uni, actually, thinking about it. And I got a kind of borderline pass, but with a recommendation that maybe the media might be a better career for me.
Right.
So I thought, screw you, I'm not having any of that. I then had a problem with asthma. I actually failed my Army medical because of being asthmatic, which was really distressing. But they said, come back in 3 years' time, i.e. when you finished uni, for another test. And I only got asthma in the summer. It was I get it with hay fever, basically.
Okay, I understand.
Easy to control these days, and all that stuff. So when I went back to do the re-test, clearly I didn't do it in the summer months, and I was absolutely fine. You know, I've got actually great lung capacity and all that stuff. So that was fine. Did my RCB, passed that with flying colours. I got Reg C pass, which is the top level you can get, which means you can go for a regular commission, which means you can serve for till you retire, basically. So
RCB, RCB is
regular commissions board. It's like the Admiralty Interview Board. I think it's called something else now. I'm not quite sure what the RAF version of it is, but it's the officer selection.
I understand.
That you have to do.
Yeah.
Right. So and then I did that just as I was finishing at university. So when I was at uni, I was in the officer training course. So just to get me really, and I actually got a TA commission. Actually, that was one of the things I do. So yeah, you know, it was. But my overriding, and I didn't necessarily realize it at the time, but I had the strong pull to being in the military because it was a family, it was security, it was structure.
Wow.
And that is what I wasn't getting on the outside.
So I get that. Was there any element of that? Because your father was also military.
Yes. That wasn't top of my, it wasn't on my mind at all. In fact, it was only actually when I went to Sandhurst, and my mum, because she was in prison at the time. Of course, remember I said she went to prison when I was at uni. She said, "Oh, you know, your dad went to Sandhurst after he was commissioned, and he also went to Bovington, which is where I was then." Because by that time, I'd switched from the Royal Regiment of Fusiliers to the Royal Tank Regiment. I was going to be in the Royal Tank Regiment. I thought, I don't want to be an infantryman, you know. So, the consideration of my dad was actually not really a consideration at all. I've got to tell you, Donald. made the
Yeah.
decision to join.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, though, I mean, my dad was in the armored car regiment or squadron, I think it was, which was their version of, their version of the army within the Ghanaian Armed Forces, and I ended up in a tank regiment. So it was quite coincidental that
Isn't
I kind
it?
of,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, kind of followed
That's
in his
very
footsteps.
interesting. And going through the process of joining the military, I mean, did the fact that your mother had that did they know about your mother's sort of background and things? Did that have any bearing on?
Yeah, they did know about it, and I thought it could be problematic, to be honest.
Yes.
But I think they did some checks and things, but it wasn't going to impact on my decision to join. So yeah.
Or indeed their decision to actually accept.
Or their decision to accept me. No, it clearly didn't stop.
Which is really good, isn't it? Really.
Yeah.
Because I guess your mother wouldn't have liked the fact that she sort of hampered your progress in where you want to go in life, because she would have wanted the best for you. That's amazing. So at the time you joined, what was your brother's opinion?
My twin brother?
Yeah.
Well, most of none of my family were keen on it at all. They wondered why I wanted to do that. Do you realize how racist the British Army is? You could be dating. My mum wasn't happy about it at all.
Wow.
And nor was anyone else. Actually, the only people who were supportive were my guardians. They said, look, if that's what you want to do, then you go and do it.
And how did you find it? I mean, from the word go, right?
I was determined. It was nothing's going to stop me from joining. I was on a mission. I'm going to join the army, and I'm going to be, I'm going to get in there.
Wow. And what was that experience like once you joined and, you start out? Because sometimes you've got sort of something in your mind of what you think it will be, and then it'd be something completely different. What was it? What was the experience like?
It was an incredible experience. I've got to say, certainly for the first few years, it was just amazing. I mean, look, I would never have imagined doing some of the things that I did, being in charge of some of this stuff that I was, going to the Royal Military Academy Standards, which I hated, by the way, but that was still quite the achievement, going to Sandhurst, passing out, in front of, it wasn't the Queen, but it was certainly a senior member of the royal family. I can't remember who it was who did our pass out parade. But it was the pass out ball in your mess kit. It was incredible, Donald. I've got to say, I learned things and things I could never have imagined. I could never, being a tank commander, being in charge of a troop of tanks, Challenger, it's just incredible. It was incredible.
Yeah.
I've got to tell you.
Before we go on to that, did you get any of your relatives supporting your passing out parade?
Yeah, so I'll tell you who came to my passing out parade. My guardians came to my passing out parade. Okay. We tried to get my mum to come, but she was in prison and they wouldn't give her a day leave to come.
Wow.
And I suspect because they would have had to send a prison officer with her.
Yes. There would have been an element. Yes,
they said they didn't have the manpower to do, the personnel to do it, and it was a real sadness, to be honest, because it was probably one of the proudest moments of my life, if I'm being honest. That passing out from Sandhurst, probably to this day, is still probably the proudest moment of my life, and I think it will be surpassed when I get my doctorate in a few years' time. But it was just an incredible moment to overcome all of that stuff in the childhood and to get to that level and to because of course Sandhurst is really tough as well. A lot of people don't realize how tough it is. We lost a good over half of our company lost to back squatting or injury or just leaving. So the attrition rate is pretty high actually. In fact, I think it was 2/3 actually. Now I can think of it. So the attrition rate is pretty high, and to get through on the first time of asking, it was incredible.
Do you know at the beginning of it all, then when you joined, do you have to did you have to declare your sexuality in any way because it's military?
No. I could only declare that I was straight, because if I'd said anything else, I would have been thrown out. Because when I was in, so I was in 90. I was at Sandhurst from 92. I joined the army at the beginning of 1992 when I went to Sandhurst, and I left in 98. And the rules changed in 2001 in terms of whether you were allowed to be gay, or bisexual, lesbian, and serve in the military. That changed in 2001. I knew, so by the time I left in 98, there was still this sort of cloud hanging over things. You had to keep it secret, Donald. You just had to keep it secret. So as far as anyone else knew, I was straight. I didn't have girlfriends and stuff. I was not doing anything with the girls, but I kind of knew where my,
yeah. And it's one of those things in life, isn't it? When you're restricted in that way, it kind of, you're not as free as everybody.
Yeah, exactly. You're not as free. Yeah, that's right. That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
So what was your experience like in terms of managing people in such a world? Because I mean, and the ratio of Black people in the Tank Regiment, especially as an officer. I mean,
so there were. I can tell you again, there were very few black troopers or soldiers. There was a couple of. There was one sergeant who was mixed race. There was basically about 4 or 5 Black people in the regiment. And I can tell you that there were I was the first Black officer in the whole of the corps. So that's all of the cavalry regiments and all of the tank regiments. And there was one Black officer, and that was me. Right? Wow. When I joined and when I left, there was one Black officer, and that was me.
Wow.
So
I mean, you're talking about standing out. I mean, you gotta stand. You stood out.
Standing out. I mean, people would. So these are the sorts of things that I kind of just had to get used to. People would literally do a double take. Soldiers would do a double take. Who's that? But is that person got a Royal Tank Regiment cap badge on? And stuff like that. And it was, and then the more sinister side of it was people would not salute me, right? And
yes, that's a real point.
That was the people would fail to salute me, and it wasn't when I first got to my regiment, I was kind of like, I kind of let it pass. The funny thing was, when I got my TA commission and I was wandering around university officer training course, it was like everyone was saluted because they all knew who I was.
Yes.
Do you see what I'm saying? So that was
I understand.
Yeah, but when I got to my regiment, people didn't really know who I was. I was a new officer. Certainly, if they were from another regiment, like we were co-located and such like, and they were on the gates, they would just I don't know whether they assumed I was not an officer, but they can't have done because they could see my rank.
But what I believe that you're saying to me is what exists in life. What people put in a category the moment they see you, the color of your skin. They put in a category, and subconsciously and consciously, because some people can never see you in that position.
Exactly, Donald. You must have
experienced it. Because even if you've got the ranks in your shoulder, which is what they would do if you were a different color, they would first look at the rank, and then but they look at you.
Absolutely.
That's how I see that.
Look at the color and then say, well, that can't be right, and it does not compute. Therefore, I'm not going to salute the guy. Now, I'll tell you, I was kind of like, just let this pass. And then there was so obviously our ID cards, our army number, officers' army numbers is 6 figures, and other ranks is 8 figures, right?
Yeah.
There was a time when you knew at the gate, if someone showed you their ID card and it was a 6-figure ID card, you must salute them because they're an officer, right? Even if they're in civilian mufti.
All right, I understand that.
I was driving out the gate once with someone who would a mentor. Let's just say call him a mentor. He was a senior captain. He was the operations officer. He was a bit of a mentor to me, and we were driving out. I showed my ID card to the guy at the gate. He just waved me forward, and the guy next to me, the officer, the captain, he hit the roof, literally hit the roof, threatened to jail the guy. He went ballistic, right? And then after we drove off, he basically put him in his place. He said, if I ever see that again, you will be in the jail. after we drove off, he said to me, "Don't ever let that pass. Don't ever let anyone disrespect you. You know, apart from anything else, they're saluting the rank. They're not saluting you as a person.
Absolutely.
You mustn't let them get away with that just because they
Yes.
think you're not an officer, whatever. You know, make sure you. And now after that, I was always very sort of, you know, I would always go back and say, right, you know, what do you think is going on here, soldier? And
Wow.
I'll challenge it. Yeah,
That's
so
amazing.
It was a good lesson learned. It was good. He was a white guy though, Donald. And you know, I suppose there's this question of, you know, there's always the thing, isn't there? You know, do I need I needed a sort of white, I'm not going to say savior, but I needed someone who was white to sort of to show me the ropes there. Do you know what I mean? In some ways, and I think that allyship, I think, is very important. You know, when we talk about racial justice and things like that, you know, allyship is really, really important. I don't think you can get away from it. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. You know, there's a point where you need to stand up and be counted for yourself, and you learn.
Yeah.
But you can actually learn from other people. You know, they teach you things that you're just not aware of, and that you should be doing in the positions that you find yourself.
Very much. Very much.
Very important.
Yeah, so I found, you know, in terms of come back to your question, I found actually commanding my soldiers was pretty good. You know, I was seen as I know, because people said, you know, seen as a really good officer and someone who was on a level with the soldiers, and they seemed to like me. And you know, I did a good job. I always got outstanding in my confidentials. Everyone outstanding until I left. You know,
that's excellent though. You know, because what I see of life is that people after a while see you for what you are. It's the initial meeting, and after that they judge you on your merits.
On your merits. Yeah, they see you.
Yeah, which is excellent. And of course, being in the military as well, people do respect the ranks once they know what's going on and everything. It's true, isn't it? Yeah. Fantastic. So how was your military career overall? How would you assess that?
Yeah, you know, it was good. It was good. I you know, I was so I did my troop leader for a year and a half, 2 years. Then I was I was squadron second in command when we went to and I was troop leader when we went to do United Nations tour in Cyprus, which went very well. And I was then squadron second in command, and then I was made the regimental signals officer. So I came back to the UK to do my course at so I was course. We did it at Blandford, I think. So we did the course there, and returned to the regiment as the RSO, and did a couple of years of that. And then they were saying, right, come on, Ben, we need to now get ready to pack you off back to Camberley for Junior Division Staff College, so that you can, you know, you're ready for being promoted to major and all that stuff. But I decided by that time, Donald, that I'd kind of had enough, in truth.
Right. Yeah. So
I kind of.
Sorry, by that time, then, where had you traveled to?
So I was 4 years in. We were based in Germany, West Germany, Fallenbostel, and we'd done tours of, basically we'd done Bactus twice, we'd done UN Cyprus once, and we'd done Northern Ireland. But by the time we came back from UN Cyprus, had a few months back at the regiment, and I then said, look, you know what, I'm ready to leave. And they were really desperate to keep me at this point. So they said, look, rather than send you to Camberley to do Junior Division Staff College, where do you want it? What posting would you like? They basically said, you take your pick. In a bid to keep me. And I said, you know what, I want to go back to the training squadron at Bovington, where these phase 2 recruits come to learn how to be tank soldiers. I said, you know, send me back there as a second in command of the training squadron. I'll do that for a bit, and then we'll see what's what. So they did send me back there, and clearly what happened was I was now back in the UK, meeting friends, going up to Sheffield to see some friends. I kind of got involved in the club scene, and then it was like, yeah, I'm definitely leaving. So rather than so far from actually making me think, oh, you know what, I want to stay in the army, actually confirmed my decision to leave. You know, because I was back in the UK. You know, I was spending weekends with all my civilian friends. It was like, yeah, I need to get out. And apart from anything else, Donald, I wanted to come out. You know, I wanted to come out and be myself, and not have to pretend to be something that I wasn't, you know, in terms of women and, you know, people. And I got to the sort of rank where people would be asking, oh, well, you're not engaged to anyone, you know, you're not getting married, Ben. It's that sort of thing, you know what I mean? And I just didn't want that. So I wanted to just kind of be myself.
Because it must be a difficult thing when, because that's naturally people, isn't it? Have you got any kids? Oh, you know. Yeah. And in life, it's just great to be what you are, isn't it? Yeah, without having to sort of pretend and everything, because it's such a freer existence.
It is, and you know, we can see it again from all the research that actually once you can unencumber yourself of something like that, and people know who you are, and you can be upfront and all the rest of it, you do live a much freer life, and you feel. And I can tell you that's exactly what happened. Once I did leave, and I was able to come out, it was like, yeah, you know what, I feel fear, you know, and I had to do. There was a lot of there was a bit of arrested development in terms of socialization, relationships, and things like that. But you know, ultimately. It was a good decision to leave.
What about your brothers then, in terms of, you know, how do they feel about you and your sexuality? Did they?
Yeah, they're very supportive. Yeah.
That's good.
My twin brother, they love my husband. You know, he's a real favorite of theirs, and yeah, no, they were great. In fact, when I came out properly, so how old have I been? I was 30 when I came out to the family, to mum, who wasn't very happy about it, and my brothers. But my brothers were just annoyed that I hadn't told them earlier. But obviously I couldn't really tell them because I was in the army, and you know, the less people that knew, the better.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? You know, when I did the RSO's course, because obviously as the regimental signals officer, you have to deal with a lot of top secret crypto and such like in terms of the codes and stuff. You have to be vetted to top secret level, and you know they go off and ask all your friends and stuff. And one of the questions they used to ask, they wouldn't these days, is, you know, do you know if Ben is a homosexual? You know, that's the question they get asked. Your friends, family, and the rest. So frankly, the less people that knew, the better.
Absolutely, you know what I mean? I get all of that.
And I passed that. So I didn't come out to them until I was 30, just after I'd left. And my brothers were annoyed that I hadn't told them earlier.
Wow, good. It's just great that they're supportive.
They're very supportive.
Yeah. Moving on to your profession now, then what is it you do now?
So I'm a psychotherapist. I've been my first degree was psychology. When I came out of the army, I went to work in an employee assistance program, which are one of these organizations that provide counseling services to other organizations. And so that was my route back into the world of applied psychology, i.e. counseling. I did my counseling course in 2002 to 2004 at the University of Manchester. And then subsequent to that, I've worked in a number of settings that have enabled me to become a psychotherapist. And now, so that I've got my own practice now. I have my own private practice, which is pretty full. So I do that. I'm also a trainer, obviously, with skills I learned from the army. I go out and do a lot of clinical training to organizations. I'm a life coach as well. And I'm a clinical consultant, usually around mental health in the workplace and employee assistance.
That's fantastic.
So, yeah, quite a lot. Yeah. So, and actually, I'm doing a doctorate in counselling psychology. So I have been engaged in a part-time doctorate in counselling psychology for the last few years. It's a 6-year course. I'm halfway through it, and I'm really enjoying that as well. Although it's very hard work, you know.
Well, that's fantastic. So, you know, what is the future holds for Ben then?
Well, so the future for me is to get my doctorate. This will be in 3 years' time. I'll probably be, and then, you know, to be honest, because I've got this, I've been running my own sort of practice for, you know, since 2013. It will just be doing more of the same. I think I'll probably do a bit more specialist work. You know, I've got a placement at the moment in the NHS. That's the reason why I was at the research conference, because I'm working with the military veteran service donors. In Manchester, part of Op Courage, right? So that's the reason. But I've actually been doing work with Walking with the Wounded, for instance, for years. Ever since I went into private practice, I've been one of their psychological therapists. So that's the sort of connection, because I have affinity with veterans. Of course,
Yes,
I
of
am one
course, of
myself.
course, of course.
You know, and that sort of shared understanding. And you know, it doesn't matter which service they're from. That shared understanding is
Absolutely,
absolutely
absolutely.
invaluable in therapy, because you don't have to do a lot of that sort of connection building, because you've already got it. You know,
Yes,
I always say to my brother and other people, you know, if I go to, you know, if I'm sat down somewhere and I get talking to someone, say they've got a veteran's badge on, right?
yes.
You know, I could be talking to that person for hours, and they could be talking to me for hours. It doesn't matter who they are.
Absolutely, absolutely.
You know what I
There's
mean?
that camaraderie to begin with, you know, the big club that
and
we all
shared,
belong to when
it's
once.
the shared knowledge, isn't it?
Oh
Shared
my
knowledge and
goodness,
understanding.
that's fantastic.
It's
So
fantastic.
that's a great help in that profession then that you've chosen.
Yeah. So I'll just be doing probably a bit more specialist stuff. But you know, ultimately, the goal for me at the moment is to, you know, obviously keep my private practice ticking over and get this doctorate. And then when I've got the doctorate, you know, I'll probably go and do a bit more specialist. I'll probably go and work in the military veteran service a couple of days a week. I do enjoy working as part of the NHS. It's an organisation I have a lot of love for. I think it's not been treated well, to be honest, in the last 10 years, but you know, it is an organization that I have a huge amount of love for. So it's great to be working there at the moment. And I will probably go back to work there once I've qualified, a couple of days a week. And then there's some, you know, there's a number of people who have said, "Oh, will you come and work for us when you're qualified?" And all that. So yeah, I've got some good options, Dom. I've got some good options.
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic. You know, absolutely superb.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to young people going forward that, you know, who find themselves, you know, at the crucial stage of life and making decisions, you know, regarding whatever, you know, what sort of advice would you give youngsters?
Would we be talking about young black youngsters or just youngsters generally? Don't.
Well, let's deal with the young black youngsters now, because we have a when I say we have a problem, society seems to have a problem with black youngsters, in that when you look at the prison, when you look at the mental institution, it's 7 to 8 to 1. That's all. So let's
real problem. Yeah, absolutely. It's a really good point. You know, so what I would say, and I've done a bit of work at this, is, you know, try and hold on to your joy wherever you can get it. As young black folk, right? You know, girls, boys, whatever. Try and hold on to your black joy wherever you can find that. You know, whether that's in fellowship with friends, in things that you could be doing, maybe volunteering. That's one of the things that you can take on as a sort of a bit of an armor against some of the stuff that, as you say, you know, we know there's some structural problems in society as far as issues of race are concerned, issues of ethnicity, and you know, ultimately there's a lot of pressure. You know, there's a lot of pressure, and there's a lot of stuff that happens that people see, and you know, one can start to feel the whole world's against me, that sort of thing. But what I know can help is, you know, just trying to hold on to your black joy, and that, you know, whether that's through friendship or stuff, as I said, stuff that you could be doing, volunteering or being an example. You know, maybe you could be an example as a young black person. You know what I mean? That's what was going to keep the fire in your belly, and also protect you to some extent from some of the nonsense that we all have to put up with, shall we say? Do you know what I mean? And that would be one of the things that I would say that can really, really help.
Well, that's fantastic, because I think your particular path to date has been quite a shining example of somebody who wants to go for what they want. You know, the army, I guess, you know, it wasn't easy. I wouldn't have thought going for that and achieving what you wanted, but you went for it, which is so important, you know, and then afterwards being who you are and saying, this is who I am, and going for it, and then going for the profession that you want and all that sort of thing.
Absolutely.
That's so good.
So there's something there as well, actually, Don, and you're right about it. Also, be your authentic self, right? Yes. You know, that's another thing that's really, really important, you know, because again, it's one of the things that can help to lift your self-esteem. You know, be you, you know, the person that you want to be, and sometimes we end up being the person that other people want us to be. Try to, you know, where possible, you young people to be yourself and to live those values, and that can be something that can help as well, you know. And don't ever think that there's a, you know, often the barriers that we face are barriers we kind of put in our own path, you know what I mean? You know, just if you want to go for something, you go for it, right?
Yeah.
You know, don't think that anything should stop you, you know, because ultimately if you have the will and the drive, you can overcome a lot of stuff. You can overcome a lot of stuff.
Absolutely fantastic. That's superb advice. At this stage, I want to say thank you very much, because that's been quite a journey.
You're very welcome.
Amazing, you know.
Thank you for letting me tell my story. It's good to
it's absolutely a privilege. And the Forgotten Generations initiative will be richer for your telling your story in so many different ways. Will it be richer? You know, fantastic. And at this stage, I'm going to ask you if you've got any questions for me, which is, I always open it up to people to say, you know, any questions at all that you've got for me?
Not really, Don. You know, I just see. I suppose the question for you is, well, you know, where do you see Forgotten Generations going? I mean, what's the sort of path? Or I mean, it's clearly you're doing a lot of stuff. It's really good stuff. You know, is there, you know, what's the sort of pathway in terms of the work that you're doing with Forgotten Generations?
Well, basically, the pathway in my head is an educational tool. Say the website, for instance. Which it generates a lot of information that people just don't know about. So ultimately, this needs to be a part of the curriculum. Nationally, internationally.
Absolutely.
And when I say a part of the curriculum, I don't mean just touching on it. It should be really not just October Black History Month. It's every day.
That's a really good point.
Because we're not black 1 month of the year.
That's true.
Right. So you know, so amongst that, we need to look at all the aspects of life of people who are of color, having achieved, will always achieve, and still achieving today and into the future. So you know, we need to bring that into the forefront of things and use the legacies that our foreparents, the trailblazers, have left us. You know, because they too afford to make us free.
That's a very good point.
So in answer to your question also, and I like Forgotten Generations to be developed internationally in each country, using this as a template to actually develop, you know, life in other countries where people are finding it difficult to make themselves heard, and that sort of thing. So it's very much a tool for now and in the future.
I like that. That's good. That is good, and I'll definitely be staying in touch, because I mean, you know, a lot of the work I'm doing is around, you know, multicultural issues and, you know, where are people at the moment. So I think both as a resource and actually maybe as a place to point people towards, Donald. You know,
Absolutely.
I will want to stay in touch with you.
And how the Forgotten Generation works is that it's a two-way thing. So whatever I can promote, if you've got your business going, we have a business page. So we promote your business on the business page. If you're an author and you've written a book, we've got a book page. And whatever you do, you promote the Forgotten Generation promotes. And thank you for your membership. You've become a member now. Thank you. You'll be updated on a regular basis.
Well, I'll remember that. Because I've actually contributed a couple of book chapters already. You know, I do a lot of work in social justice and stuff like that. So I'll definitely let you know. You know, if I go on with it, you know, I probably will get around to writing at some point again after I've been qualified. But I will. I'll definitely keep you posted about that.
Excellent.
That'll be a good way thing.
Yes. Ben, thank you so much.
A pleasure.
Absolutely.
A pleasure, Donald.
A pleasure to talk to you, and so good, you know, going forward with the Forgotten Generation. Thank you again so much.
Thank you very much, my friend. You take good care of yourself, and we'll speak again, no doubt, soon.
Absolutely.
All right, fella.